It's not a trap. We're finally putting the finishing touches on our Star Wars trilogy episodes with the final installment. Here comes Return of the Jedi. Stay with us. Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. Happy New Year. If it's your first episode joining us, we welcome you aboard. If you're new, thanks a bunch as well. It's great to have you here for a new year of podcasting and music and movie goodness, which we always look forward to, Eric, as always, right?
As always, the best.
We're sailing into season 5. We're closing out season 4.
Yeah.
Ain't
that something?
Season 5.
Craziness. Yeah.
It's something.
Yeah.
You're right. I don't know what it is.
It's something.
But it's something. And if you want to see more about what that something is, hit us up on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. You can see the video versions of most of our episodes are there. And public service announcement. Hey, if you want to support independent content creators like us, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/3324 and find out ways to help support people like us and content creators and keep the stuff coming. That's buymeacoffee.com/3324. And you can be one of our green room supporters and you get to hang out there and find out what's happening there. So, all right, enough of that. We put all the business aside. We did that in less than a minute. We are closing out something we started, I think we started in 20. We didn't get to Star Wars till 2022, right?
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
We kind of had it on the shelf. We didn't do much with it. But now 3 years later, it's only right that we're closing it out and we're finishing.
Yeah.
Which makes it
the
happy.
Classic trilogy. The absolute best. Yeah.
And we can't finish it without the people we started it with.
That's right.
That's it. I mean, this is, we're going to go out the way we came in. And our first guest in no particular order, Sean Solo, also known as Sean Grady.
Yes. Yep. Back from the carbonite. I'm out. Happy to be here talking about one of my favorite trilogies.
You see all right? You're not blind?
Oh, is that you, Dean?
No carbonation sickness. Boy.
Gotcha. All right. Nice. Also known as Sean Grady, co-founder, co-creator of Drama from the Past. We'll put a link in the show notes to that. You can find him on Facebook. If you're in the New York downstate area, they do great period pieces from the Revolutionary era, American Revolutionary War era. And it's always a great time, and he does great work with his partner, Gary. Next up, Nick Skywalker. The Rise of Skywalker. Nick,
thank you.
Nick Leshy, how are you? Happy New Year.
I am great. I love being with you all. And this is just one of my favorite parts of the day whenever I'm, scheduled to be on. So thank you for having me.
Wow.
Agreed.
You know what? Now that I have that information, you'll only be on 2 more times this year.
I know. You got to keep my ego under control.
That's not me talking.
I have to build up the want in you now that I know that.
I know.
Now that we have that power.
But especially Star Wars. I mean, this was one of those of you who read my blog always see me mentioning it. Like it's one of my favorite movies. It's what got me to love movies when I was a kid. Yeah. So the original trilogy is still one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Whether it's special editions or whatever, it's still great.
Yeah, we'll talk.
He's given his disapproval.
Yeah, as we did with previous episodes, I disavow the new versions. I have copies of the original version, and Sean got to watch it as well. I hope. And
yep, I did.
And actually, part of what I have to say kind of revolves around the original version. I think it's important to talk about that, which we'll get to. I don't want to get ahead of it, but
yes,
this is a very. The original trilogy is a very interesting series of films because no other films have been tinkered with so many times over so many years. And some of the changes are incremental. Some you don't even know about. They fixed some audio or they did this. But it's almost like when a person ages and they start getting cosmetic surgery done, right? To look better.
They can't stop.
And it almost becomes a point where where it's unrecognizable from what it was.
Yeah.
Right. Is that an interesting analogy or?
Yeah, absolutely. certainly don't remember what the films were, because there's been, there's, like you say, there's just been so many things. And even seeing the special editions when they first came out in theaters, I remember like the weird sound mix that they did for those films, and like just sort of and then they fixed those, and then they would do more effects, and every major home release had a different soundtrack, a whole new thing, and he's always adding these little
yeah. Although I guess he can't do it anymore since he doesn't own Star Wars. I guess that has come to an end.
I guess that's a saving grace. Yeah.
At some point there was an end point to it, but
I think it would behoove Disney though to actually give the fans what they want though. They have these specialized editions out there. Frankly, I don't even know how these guys are getting away with it, to be honest, because they're not. You could download this stuff, but you could also buy it.
It's an underground network.
Physical copies, there are sites that you could actually buy this stuff. How they're doing that is beyond me.
They probably get shut down pretty quick, and then they pop up again. It literally is like the Rebel Alliance against the Empire.
Help me, Dean Ligerio. You're my only hope.
What did you say my last name was?
Ligerio.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Ligerio.
All right. Solo.
Must have been the audio.
All right, let's get to the stats so we can kind of get that out of the way, and we can start talking about the movie. This was released, as has become the tradition, May 23rd of 1983. This was directed by Richard Marquand, who really didn't have a big filmography, and then he didn't have it afterwards because he passed away young. But not, these guys were not like big name directors that Lucas got for his. After he decided not to direct. It was written by Lawrence Kasdan and George Lucas, of course, from a story by George Lucas. $32 to $42 million budget, somewhere in there. Again, this was self-financed. Again, Lucas did not go to a studio for money. He, by now really had the dough to do it. $482 million box office. And, of course, an Oscar for visual effects, as it will always win. This was in the era when sci-fi movies weren't nominated for major categories, didn't have the respect that like Lord of the Rings would get, and kind of
right,
where that would kind of turn around. This was still in the age of that's kid stuff and it's goofy and it's whatever. So, but it has endured anyway. So, like I said, brief history. It was personally financed by Lucas. He didn't want to. He's done with directing. For this one, he said, "You know what? Hey, Steven Spielberg, my friend, why don't you direct this for me?" But at the time, Spielberg couldn't do it because George Lucas had left the Directors Guild association. So there was this kind of we as much as I want to, I can't because you're not in the guild and I am in the guild. Sean, where do you think he went next for a director?
Where do I think he went next?
Or do you know?
I do not.
He went to a very similar Spielbergian director, David Lynch. He approached David Lynch, and David Lynch like, this ain't my thing. This is your thing. This is like your thing. This ain't the Wookiee. This ain't my thing.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna ratchet it up even further after David Lynch, you go to David Cronenberg.
Oh my gosh. You never know.
I guess Lucas did try to get some big name directors. It's just the ones he picked after Spielberg were avant-garde to say the least, I think, right?
Well, that was, I think, the idea was to get directors who were visionary type people, but certainly not for this. It would have been a totally different movie, I think, if either of those guys had,
Would that have been a bad thing? Because let me put the cards on the table. This being the last of the trilogy, by the time we got to this, is it fair to say the framework of this movie, Return of the Jedi, is pretty much a safe bet? They're kind of hedging their bets. They're going back to Tatooine, right. And then you have another Death Star. So we're kind of retreading which we've bemoaned about Rise, Force Awakens. Like, oh, it's the same. It's like, well,
Yeah.
Jedi pretty much did the same thing. The first hour of the film is on Tatooine.
Yeah, the beats are very similar to A New Hope, or what is now called A New Hope, right? Because I think it got some backlash, Empire Strikes Back. And, in hindsight, we look back at, that episode as like one of the best. But, I think this really felt like that joyful, beat for beat kind of, destroying the Death Star all over again, and the lightsaber duel at the end. This is all, rehashing kind of the things that worked in the past.
Yeah, it's very easy to go there because essentially, Eric, isn't this that they're just kind of basically tying up the Vader and Luke story? I mean, there really was nothing else that was left. That's really, rescuing Han Solo, sure, but as we would find out later on, Harrison Ford didn't want to be in the film. He's like, just kill me off, like this, leave me unresolved.
Right.
So they really, the path was to resolve the Luke thing.
I mean, the decision, probably the biggest change, I think, was the decision to make it so personal at the very end, to make it so intimate and not this big grandiose thing as he would do with like Revenge of the Sith, which is really nice contrast. But, I mean, he played it safe. I think there was a lot of things that they wanted to do, but didn't. He just decided, well, I'm getting a divorce. I'm in a bad mood. So I think he copped out on a lot of really bold ideas. And he just decided to, and my initial thought at the time too was, and I think you and I both agree on this, Dean, was how more kid-like this movie felt.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. It almost felt like he made it for an even younger demographic. And
100%.
That if you're 5 years old, 6 years old, watching this grand finale to this trilogy, this is the movie to watch because it's, it really does tie everything up in a nice little bow. The rebels win, and you don't want to see anything but that. You want the good guys to win. You want, and yeah, I mean but it's a movie that has become near and dear to my heart, and it's like comfort food for me. This particular chapter. So yeah.
Sean, do you think the lighter tone of Jedi was a knee-jerk reaction to the downer that Empire was? I mean, Empire is well regarded, and it's in most circles, it's regarded as the best one. Now, I'll always say Star Wars is the best, and then Empire. But do you think that was a kind of a part of the equation? Is wow, this was kind of really dark, and we want to kind of bring
it. It seems that way watching it. I watched it twice. Once the original that you actually I started it on Disney Plus. Then you had sent me the original, and then I watched that, and then I finished the Disney Plus that I had started. And yeah, definitely, I was definitely watching it, going, this is more for kids than any of the three. And with the Ewoks, and I remember I was a kid when that came out, and I mean, it exploded. There were cookies, there was cereal, there was a cartoon, there was the Ewok toys. Like it was, I mean, I think the Ewoks were like the big draw for kids, and I definitely think that it was.
Yeah, and there's a lot more
of a
slapsticky stuff. Tapping the stormtrooper on the shoulder, and I'm on the other side, and flipping it. There was definitely kind of a.
There's a shift. It was
as big as the stakes were with the second Death Star, even bigger, and they didn't say. They seemed to be like, we'll figure it out. I'll hotwire this open, and
right.
At least on the scenes with the Emperor and Vader and Luke had the gravity to them. They had like the feeling of like desolation, but it seems like on it was like beach blanket bingo on Endor because they just didn't seem to take anything. We'll have 3PO wave and then we'll ambush you and do all that kind of stuff. So it almost seems like it's the Emperor scenes had the darkness that Empire had, Nick. Right? It almost seems like they're kind of going back to it, but then we would cut away, which reminded me a lot of Phantom Menace, where it was like the seriousness, And then they cut
Right.
to like the battleground with Jar Jar, and he's jumping around and rolling and doing all this crazy stuff.
Yeah, I mean the Ewoks get a lot of backlash now, but I think I heard he had originally wanted to use Wookiees, so he was definitely aiming for the merchandising and things like that. I remember watching the Ewok TV movies when they came out. So, like Sean said, they really hit big with all the merchandising. But the scenes with the Emperor were pretty cool because we had only gotten a tease of the Emperor in Empire Strikes Back, and he was like, Ricardo Montalban and Wrath of Khan, like just every line he delivered was like just so like, he was definitely the villain. And but those scenes with Luke and Vader and the Emperor were just, like you said, the gravitas was there. The stakes were high. And as a kid, I remember watching saying, is he going to go to the dark side? I remember seeing in the teaser Luke standing next to Vader, and Luke is wearing all black. So I was like, oh my gosh, did he really join the dark side? So as a kid, it really was like, intense.
Yeah, and we didn't really ever pick up on those subtleties of like wearing black and what that meant for, like the turning to the dark side at the time was just kind of like, it was very, just very like, oh, we're into Luke Skywalker. Is he going to be bad? Is he going to be good? But he's wearing from the first scene we see him, he's in a dark cloak, right? And he's he's kind of he's tiny, so he's never going to be a menacing figure.
Yeah. The scenes next to Vader. Vader looks so huge and enormous.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know David Prowse was a tall guy, but wow,
like a foot on him. Yeah.
Well, we knew very little about the history of the Jedi too. Only what these two old men were pretty much revealing to Luke, and he represented that intrigue of this is the next step of. And I really like the maturity that Luke had in the film. And dare I say, a little bit of the arrogance and the hubris that the Jedi would convey in the prequels, like the whole business of them failing. And Luke kind of almost goes there in that sense. Like he's so smug at times, like he just knows exactly what he thinks he's going to do, but he does. And it whether it's throwing a skull at a cop head, which anybody could do, by the way. I don't know why a Jedi doesn't really
no one
need
ever
to do
thought
that.
of it before.
Yeah, I guess, but
therein lies the difference. No one ever thought of it. Now I want to talk about since you brought up Luke with the skull. In watching this film, I think the first half, the whole stuff on Tatooine was much. The pacing was much better, and it was much. I think it was much more interesting what was going on because we got drips and drabs of the characters as they kind of came in, and we found out what was going on. And I never really noticed how much of the film happened on Tatooine. Like when we used to watch them, like, oh yeah, they start there and then they go do other things, but. When I was watching it and that stuff ended, I like checked the time. It was like 56 minutes in to a 2-hour and like 13-minute film, and I think this is probably where the difference is from the special editions is in watching the original edition, all those scenes were quieter. They were less busy.
Yeah.
Like with the special editions, there's fucking aliens everywhere. It's like a supermarket. It's like Stop and Shop. Yeah. Like there's so many different things going on. Like it's distracting. In watching the original edition, there's barely anybody in the palace. It's like desolate. There's just some bounty hunters, and there's some very light like flute music playing in the background. Like it has something more akin to like something in Casablanca, than like a cafe there than the cantina with all these different characters they're not there to serve. They don't serve any purpose.
You hit it right on the head when you said background, and the scene where with the dancing girl is a mess in the special editions because the whole point of that scene is Jabba wanting her and grabbing her. The song is not the point. Him like adding that big musical number totally ruined that scene because that's not what the scene's about. And again, he did it for the sake of the kids. You know, I think he made it. He went even further into turning it into a kids film with that stupid fuzzy guy, and you know, that was like the biggest sin of all the changes, and for me was like the most ridiculous.
Yeah, I checked out when I saw that. I was like, you know, like I remember when I saw it, it just there's really no need for it. Like I just never understood. Like,
You're
okay,
losing,
we want to add stuff in that makes sense or stuff but that whole thing, and after watching the original version where it's just so quiet, like you're in with this like sweaty palace. It's hot. It's not like a nightclub where there's all these people are just in the background like looking, and it's like Nick. I mean, do you remember? I mean,
that's
does it become?
I don't remember. I remember Sean saying something similar to that when we were talking about Empire or the original Star Wars, where he didn't remember what the originals looked. So because we had seen the special editions so often, I do remember what, like you were saying, that original scene didn't seem as filled with all these characters, because it reminded me like the Wizard of Oz when the characters went to the big Emerald City door and then down the hallway to see the wizard. It felt that way when C-3PO was knocking on the door and that little eyeball pops out, and then you know when they go and they see Jabba, that was supposed to be the big reveal because we hadn't seen that character before. I'm kind of, you know, torn about special editions because I do like some of the things, and Lucas justifies it in a lot of the interviews that he gives. He says these are things he wanted to do from the beginning. He wanted the Ewoks to blink, and he wanted this, and he wanted that, right? But yeah, I think in hindsight, you know, he has the tools, so he's able to do it. And in some cases, it works. I can imagine as a filmmaker, he's watching these movies and he's just annoyed because he sees the flaws now with the technology of what he could do.
But it's not like these films were bombs and they didn't make any money. It's like this made $482 million like it is. And when I watched it today in its original form, I enjoyed it more because all this other stuff wasn't going on. That was especially in Jabba's palace. Like I want to concentrate on the bounty hunter bringing in Chewbacca and what's going and that scene, the tenseness, and not having people sitting in the background like they're eating a steak dinner.
It's a distraction, is what it is.
Yeah. But I didn't find it as distracting as in Star Wars: A New Hope when that came out, especially that first part. I mean, when we talk about the ending of the movie, I think that was the biggest mistake Lucas made with the special editions. But yeah, that whole stuff at Tatooine, I hate because it brought it back and then it made that planet so integral to everything else that came after.
Yeah, and even Luke says it to Han. He's like, "Oh, you grew up." He's like, "Yeah, I grew up here. You're not missing anything."
You're gonna die. That's my favorite line.
Yeah, I think the Tatooine part is my favorite part of the movie. I like that the best. Revisiting it, there's a lot going on. Everybody, you know, it's. I think like Han Solo not in a ship at the end of the movie was a miss. Now that I watch it, like it was Lando that blows up the Death Star and Han's hot wiring a door. It's so not. I don't know. I like the swashbuckler Han Solo flying and the yeehaws fine from Lando, but I don't know. I like the Tatooine,
and they kind of also gave you a MacGuffin with that because when Han Solo gives the Falcon over to Lando, he's like, "Oh, I have a feeling I'm not going to see her anymore," and it's like, okay, well, that means it's probably gonna.
Yeah.
Falcon's going to be destroyed. It's like, well, no, that didn't happen.
No. And the Falcon belonged to Lando. Right?
Originally,
it was his ship.
I mean, it's kind of cool. They're giving you a little bit of that backstory there, and Solo's supposed to be changing as a character because he's in love now. He's got more, you know, to lose. You understand it, but I agree with Sean. It's like I never even when I first saw it, I was like, why is Solo on Endor?
Yeah,
you know, it should be, you know, he should be up there fighting the, you know. But And then all these,
100%.
and not only that, but you had all these guys in the ship. Like, who the hell are these guys? Like that guy sitting behind Lando, and he's looked like Johnny Carson. I'm like, who the hell? Who the fuck is this guy? Like, all these people like working the controls, and it's like it only takes two. Now it's like there's a whole army of people in this thing. It's like, I never got that either. So
you know what? I noticed the same thing. I don't know if they took it out of the special editions, but the Emperor had like two sidemen.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're in the special edition.
Okay, they're kind of like almost like consultants. I don't know.
Weird.
They were always there. They were there from the start.
Yeah.
Those two
that's what I'm saying. They were there
dignitaries.
in the beginning. I don't know if they got taken out because of the maybe they didn't fit the story because they didn't really do anything. Or
I only say that because I remember our friend John. We used to make fun of that. Like
they're just kind of there. It's like
So
what are they there for? It's like what.
And you mentioned the special, like the Sarlacc adding the head coming out. I thought it was so unnecessary because the whole idea of the Sarlacc, that thing digesting you over 1,000 years, like when the head comes out, it's like why wouldn't that thing just eat you? It doesn't jive. It's so unnecessary.
It looks like the thing from
Empire.
It looks like, first of all, it's like a giant pistachio nut,
right?
Or it looks like the Little Shop of Horrors, the plant,
right? Feed me.
Feed me. That's
Seymour.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, it's kind of strange, but and then. It sounds like we're bashing it, and we kind of. I think we're kind of illustrating that as good as this film was, there's just a lot of it was cut and paste because in Empire you had the ice planet, so now you have to have the overly green planet of Endor,
right?
So this stuff it really seems like this was kind of like a rush job for they had the framework of the story, but how are we going to do it? It's like, let's go back to Tatooine, and then we'll have the green planet. We'll have Wookiees. I mean, all these original threads seem pretty like easy ways out. For a series of films where the universe is, it's like, this universe is so broad and diverse and all these different things. It's like they kind of went back to the same thing.
He kind of got lazy with
the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the whole budget wise, you could understand maybe some of the changes. I think having a whole planet of Wookiees might have been a little too much. So what does he do? He cuts it in half, and he literally by name,
pint-sized Wookiees.
Yeah, you're taking letters from Wookiee and making and cutting it in half like Ewok.
Good point.
So, but I have to say, I mean, I didn't mind them. I didn't mind them then, and I don't mind them.
I never cared. To be honest, I never cared for them. What I liked was the David versus Goliath aspect of it, where like when they cut the logs and but them throwing rocks and little spears at stormtroopers, they have armor. It's like like that's where the kid element came in of like kids are going to be like, oh wow, okay, cool, but stormtroopers are horrible shots.
Their IQ dropped significantly in Jedi. The IQ of a stormtrooper and the abilities of a stormtrooper went down significantly in this movie.
Well, the Empire as a whole, I think.
Yeah,
pretty much. So you take out the Emperor and Vader, the Empire's done.
Yeah,
initially, that was the
just
whole,
a bunch of lackeys that don't don't know anything. So it's just I think that's what bothered me about it. Even back then, I remember I'm like, it's just too goofy. Like I don't mind. You can play to a younger audience without it being goofy. Like which is what Star Wars did. Star Wars played to a younger audience without it being. There was some serious to overtones and undertones and things that were going on, but it still played to a younger audience. The swashbuckle, the adventure.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of was for me a little bit different. And since we're talking about Endor, I mean, our fucking speeder bikes, like the Pintos of the Empire, like
I thought those were cool. I like those.
They're very cool. And the speed was very cool, but it seems like when you touch them, they blow up from the back, like
the explodes. Well, what always got me too was some of the dialogue too, like go get your ride. Like stormtroopers are saying, like they're talking like biker dudes, it's like I always thought it was kind of strange, but
the scene itself, the scenes are great, Sean. I mean, like just the the filmmaking of speeding, going through the forest, all that is so exciting. That's where pod
That's
racing.
part of Endor for me is that.
Yeah. And you see where pod racing from Phantom Menace got
Yep.
it.
Yep.
Its DNA from that. He was able to execute it probably the way you really wanted to.
Did you guys have a problem though with the just how big? Did you ever ask just how big is Endor? Because when you're thinking about it, these things are supposed to be going 200 miles an hour.
Yes.
Right.
And they're back in 2 seconds after they fall off.
They look like they've been going for almost like they should be miles upon miles away. And yet Luke just happens to find the band. He's like, oh, where's Leia?
I thought the same thing. I'm like, how do you get back there already?
That should take almost a whole day to get back where they were.
Your bike breaks down, you're done. Yeah.
And he wasn't even out of breath either. He was just kind of came running and hey,
yeah,
he was just he was next door.
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll tell you what got me this time around with this movie is I thought the acting was pretty bad on Endor. I don't know.
I think everybody was just kind of there. It just felt it's not so much that the acting was bad, but it just nobody was really giving.
Yeah,
Harrison Ford, admittingly did not want to be there.
Phoning it in.
Yeah, he phoned it in.
He wanted to kill the character. Lucas said no, so he's like, okay. So they basically turned him into a buffoon. He's like the comic relief. He's just he's not the wise ass that he was in Star Wars. He's just a goof.
Right.
He's playing off with the.
He's like a lovesick fool.
Yeah.
And not that I'm watching it for the acting, but I'm just noticing. I'm like, it's kind of.
Leia's very subdued. Where's the feistiness that we saw in both the first two films? There's a lot to we can go on and on. It's there seems to be a lot to pick apart with this film.
Yeah. All those years later.
Yeah, I mean, Nick, it seems like Harrison Ford at this point was already Indiana Jones. It seems like he was more concerned. Like when I was watching Jedi, I was actually saying, at this period, I'd rather watch him as Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. And and he didn't have a lot of the character traits that, we were familiar with in the first two films. But I still loved it as a kid. I really did.
Of course.
And I just remember when, I guess it was 97, a magazine called Sci-Fi Universe came out, and the cover story was 50 Reasons We Hate Return of the Jedi.
Yep,
and
I remember that.
Yeah.
This was, around the time when the internet was coming around. So just like people were rediscovering Empire Strikes Back, and that was when they were like, this is one of the better movies and better sequels. I think they were also reevaluating, Return of the Jedi, just like all the hate for the prequels and things like that. I think we had grown, but Lucas was still targeting that same young demographic. And, I think trying to course correct with maybe some of the things that he was hearing about the darkness of Empire. It had its flaws, but still one of my favorites. I love it.
Sure.
Yeah, I often have this conversation with our friend Andy, just because this one happens to be his favorite. It's also my oldest son's favorite. But when Andy saw it, he was 5. So of course you're going to love it. Your first Star Wars experience theatrically is going to be this film.
Yep.
It's a great kids movie.
100%.
You know what I'm saying? Like back, you think about some of the fantasy films that have been coming out, like Labyrinth and Dark Crystal and all this stuff, like in the mid 80s and that kind of thing. You had Jedi. Jedi is right up there with this kind of. In fact, Dean and I, that's one of the things that Dean actually, I remember you hating was all the puppets. Like what the heck, what is this? The Muppet Show or whatever. I remember when we first saw the Gamorrean guards, we're like, you were very, very critical.
Yeah, they look like cartoon character, like
when we first saw it.
Broad, cartoony characters. But I've grown to you. But you grow to love some of the characters,
exactly.
When you take it with the overall experience, if each film was the same, we'd probably be sitting here lamenting that each one was the same in tone. So, we got a swashbuckling adventure, we got a dark, serious middle chapter, and then we got a kind of a lighthearted kind of closing out, almost
Sure.
like getting the gang back together and finishing out the story. The one thing I did notice about Jedi is this is really the first time that we actually hear Darth Vader have an actual conversation where he's not you're gonna laugh, where he's not threatening somebody, right? Or trying to intimidate. Like that scene with Luke is actually him speaking to him. Like, that name has no meaning for me, and
Yeah.
like they're actually conversing, and it's not in a threatening, like he was trying when he was trying in Empire to get him to come over, and everything else from Vader is threatening somebody or her intimidation. And then I noticed it in the scene, like they took Luke away and then they just left the camera on Vader, and he's kind of like had his head down.
Yeah.
And like we said in previous episodes about Star Wars, that the acting that has to go through when someone can't speak, and you can't see their face. And especially Vader, who is just kind of personifies pure evil as far as movie villains go. I've kind of hung on that moment for a second. I was like, wow, they're just kind of leaving the camera on him as he's just kind of sitting there, and you don't really know what he's contemplating. Like, you never really know, because every time the Emperor's like, is you got your mind right? And he's like, no, I'm good. We're gonna do what we got to do. And then, I think you're changing. He's like, no, we're good. Like there was always that the doubts were there, and I think maybe do you think, Sean, that everyone else was seeing the doubt, but he wouldn't let himself see it? Like, because everyone, like Luke says, I sense it in you, and even the Emperor, like, are you in on this? And he's like, no, I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm noticing, and I'm watching it, like when you watch this movie as now an older man, and you see things you didn't see when you were a kid. Like, I love this movie. I'll always love it. I'm picking it apart now, and that's because I'm looking at it in a different way, in a different lens. Yeah, I'm seeing those moments. I guess that you'd say a little bit more humanity breaking through, and that's interesting that what you said about the mask over his face, and you can't, but you can still kind of read what's going on with the camera work and just the subtle tilt of a head, or I thought that's a good point that you make, and I think it's a fair point. I see what you see, because I watched it like right as soon as I finished the original that you sent me, I went and finished the Disney Plus, and I noticed a lot more. I focused a lot more on that, and I think, and it's interesting that as he became more human, he weakened as a person, and like he's going to be dead in like another scene. He just gets his hand chopped off, but and I know he picked up the Emperor and threw him, but like it almost like the humanity coming out it actually weakened him as.
Yeah, or Nick, was it also because Luke was getting stronger, right? Because the whole cat and mouse with the Emperor is like, I can feel. He's such a bastard. Like, I feel you. I feel the hate to strike me down. And like so. In one way, it seems like the Emperor's plan was to take Luke and have him kill his father.
Right.
There's no plan for the three of them, it seems, because he kind of says that at the end. He goes, take your place by my side, which means like get rid of this guy.
Yeah.
So do you think it's also, to Sean's point, that he's kind of weaker, maybe because he is becoming a little more humanity creeping through, but also Luke is feeling the effects of the hatred, right?
The
and
revenge.
he's kind of like powering up. It's almost like it's the scales are tilting.
Yeah, there is that power in the dark side, right? And think about it. Anakin did die in his battle against Obi-Wan, right? His limbs were chopped off, and now he's more machine than man. And you realize how much this character, Darth Vader, is physically suffering, and it's this kind of machinery that keeps him alive and going. So I think as his Anakin spirit or whatever is coming out, I think he doesn't need that kind of machinery anymore. And I think for sure, like whatever, evil Sith energy beams were being shot out, I think he absorbed all that, and that's what killed him right at the end. But you do see a little bit of that kind of weakness come out, where he's not this intimidating evil force of nature that you had seen in the first two movies. But the rule of two is really interesting, where the Sith really are just like the leader and their little apprentice guy, right? And so he would have knocked out Vader, and Vader, I guess, knew that, because in Empire, he's telling him, he's like, join me, we will knock out the Emperor. It'll be you and me, ruling. So I thought that whole dynamic was really interesting, because it wasn't going to be the three of them, together. It was like just two. So I thought that was really interesting.
No
Eric, what do you think? I mean, does that hold water? That kind of Vader was kind of powering down because he was like a little more subject to, because he got the shit kicked out of him really by Luke.
Yeah, I don't think he
you
really.
Think it's because he was kind of
I honestly don't think. Well, in his zeal to overthrow the Emperor, he honestly wanted Luke by his side, and his obsession with and running the galaxy their way. But I don't think he really anticipated how powerful Luke did become. In that discussion, just the fact that Luke created a lightsaber. He's like, your skills are complete. So like, wow, that's a big deal. I always, to me, Vader was just from the get-go, from the start of the movie, he's just very broken in this movie. He's bigger. He's like, he almost feels like a dad Vader. Like, he's even like to the effect where, I mean, it's Dave Prowse was a big guy, but he almost kind of let himself go a little bit. It seems like he was kind of paunchy. Even the helmet suggested almost like a double chin, in my opinion. Like the helmet's like really, really big in this film.
Yeah, it was big.
And
it's compared to
reflective too. It's like super shiny.
Yeah. And
I think that's what Mel Brooks was spoofing, Dark Helmet, because it was that kind of enormous.
It occurred to me as I was watching it last night. It was like, God, look how fucking big his helmet is. Like, it's like you could you could sense like the head, and the helmet's like out to here, and it's like
the flares are really big, are really long in the back.
If you see the outfit in the Obi-Wan series, that's probably the best looking Vader yet, because it's like it makes perfect sense, because it's like right up against his skin. It's like almost like an exoskeleton kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it gives that effect. It's menacing. And here it just I always felt like, man, he's just hunched over and he's bowing, and it's like, and of course, the big reveal later on, it's like,
well, yeah, I guess we'll thank you for the segue. Thank you for the segue. Yeah. I had a problem from the jump with that wrinkly old salamander Sebastian Shaw being under there.
Poor guy.
It was well, you know what? Especially when the prequels came out.
Yes.
And we find out that Anakin is 19 or 20 when he has his kids. Yeah. And if Luke is 20 or 19 when all this happens, he's only 40. That's not a 40-year-old man. I don't care I don't care what happened to you. Like, right. and at the end, when they show the Force ghosts of him and Obi-Wan, he looks fucking older.
Yeah.
Than Obi-Wan. So for like that for me, like the big reveal, and we got like this older, and they probably weren't thinking ahead and thinking about what they were going to do. But for me, I'm like, that doesn't match the ass kicking Vader.
No, it doesn't.
That was, I don't know what I was expecting to see, but it wasn't that.
Yeah.
Put it
so, Dean, do you prefer the new version where they show the young Anakin? No. Yeah, I don't either.
No.
I think that's the biggest mistake that Lucas made, because it just doesn't make sense. Then why aren't we seeing Obi-Wan when he was younger? And,
correct.
And his argument was that, Vader was never Anakin, and this is Anakin.
Yeah, that's when Anakin died. Yeah, that's when Anakin died.
Yeah, that's when he was. When he was a Jedi.
Yeah,
right. Exactly. It still doesn't work for me.
Another, you know what? Let's talk about that whole scene with the Emperor, and after Luke just annihilates his father, just hacking. Like, it wasn't even like sword play. It was aggression and rage when Luke is just hacking at Vader, and that's when he cuts the hand off. That scene is another scene of someone acting behind a mask, and when the Emperor is killing Luke and he's shooting him with the lightning, and you see the reflections of the lightning in Vader's mask, and he's just not doing anything, but you kind of feel like there's conflict there just because of the way they're holding on it, like and it's not moving. Like I don't understand. As someone who's watching it, I don't understand how they're getting that emotion from me when I'm watching a black mask with lightning bolts like reflect, just the lights reflecting, and he's not moving, but I'm getting that he's conflicted about it.
As a kid, seeing it in a theater, we were screaming at the screen, help him, like as kids, we were like kind of Lucas was manipulating us, Lucas and Richard, the director, but like you said, like no eyes being seen, no facial twitches or anything, just looking at his face, a shot of his face. It's cinema, it's pure cinema editing where it's telling us what to think. On a stage, you have to look at like all the actors at the same time. Here, the camera is telling us, here's the reaction. What is he thinking? And we're interpreting. We're like, come on, help him. So I think that it works perfectly. And of course, then when he finally lifts the Emperor up, the theater screamed. We were a bunch of kids in the theater, but we were like, and then you see like his skeleton, kind of like the electricity. So you could see that power just kind of going through him, and that's what kills him, so. Yeah.
And those were great effects for the time. I still love, when I watched it today, I love that effect of the skull, like the lightning kind of like almost like X-raying through his helmet,
Yeah.
All that stuff was great. Like it hadn't aged at all, But then Eric, we get to the pulling off that helmet.
I almost feel like they should never have showed his face. I mean, they could have showed it from. Could have always been from Luke's perspective. When he pulls the helmet off, it could have cut to Luke just looking down to a silhouette, and just because they always showed like just the back of his head, so it always gave the illusion. But I totally agree. I was always, it was so underwhelming and so, And then, the whole idea of bringing Hayden Christensen in and just, it fixes that part of it, but it does, but it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. In my head canon, I always say, he's, being Darth Vader really aged him, like it was really brutal and hard, but it could never live up to our imagination. It could never live up to what we would have perceived Darth Vader to look like or to be, And, he had to change his eye color to match Hayden Christensen's. He had to get rid of the eyebrows, like little tweaks like that he had to do, to kind of make it be consistent. And it just makes it worse, I think, so it's a shame. It's a shame.
To totally not shit on the movie, Sean, I want to throw some admiration towards the great Admiral Akbar, one of my favorite characters in the film. From the Mon Calamari. The guy was a squid. But interestingly enough, they had like squid hands, but they had regular man feet. I don't know if you noticed, I'm watching, they're wearing shoes. They didn't have like flipper or bare feet. They're wearing like boots.
Yeah.
Unless they like tied up the squids and like put them in.
I'm sure, they probably.
Admiral Akbar was what a great character. Again, this is all, and what I loved about this film is everything was practical.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was like those masks, like that would be a CG, that would be a guy with dots on his face today. But they had to make the eyes look dead, like those dead fish eye, like how fish have those dead eyes.
Yeah,
but they're still kind of have a life behind them. He's just great, and he's calling the shots from his command center, swinging around in the chair like this, this and that, and he really, of course, the classic line of it's a trap. He
gave it that tension.
Like, the whole battlefield. He's like, oh shit, we're in for it.
Yeah.
Yep. Get out of there.
It was nice to see the Rebel Alliance as a whole. Like you see, like the assembled troops and all the different races and that kind of thing. Mon Mothma coming in, and there's another female lead in this film. There's somebody even higher than Leia, it seems. Like she's just sitting there. You think that she's in charge, but she's not. She's kind of, but Mon Mothma's given the briefing, and you see all these other dignitaries in the background, and it's like, wow, it's like really kind of expanded on the whole idea of the alliance being more of a networked kind of thing. So I always like
many,
that. You know,
many Bothans died
yeah,
to bring us this information.
That's right.
It's like looks off into the far,
yeah.
into the galaxy, like remembering. So I'm sure there's going to be a spin-off series of the Bothans.
Sure.
Or like they're gonna, they're gonna come
We
out with
might-
that.
We
What they
very
had to
well
do
might
in
see
the
them in Andor season 2. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Like,
Perhaps.
And I would
Yeah.
watch it.
Yeah.
Nick is
Yeah.
all in.
I love Star Wars.
I
just
will.
love it.
I want to ask. When I saw this, I guess I was a 9. I had people spoiled the movie for me. I knew Darth Vader was going to die. I knew Yoda was going to die. I knew Boba Fett was going to die. What else? I knew. It's like, so I didn't know how they died, but somebody ruined it for me. So for me, I didn't get to have that experience of like, oh no.
It was also, I remember there was a Time Magazine article about it, cover article, and it had details about that. So that's where we saw Jabba the Hutt for the first time. Like, it's a shame.
And I knew
Now you have spoilers. Now you have all these spoilers on the internet. But even back then, like, imagine seeing something like that for the first time with no spoilers, not knowing what was going to happen and all the surprises. And
So
I wish I had that experience.
I've got a question for the three of you. See who can answer it.
Okay.
So of course, as Sean alluded in the spoilers, if you haven't seen this, but our friend Yoda dies. He lays in bed and he kind of like he's there, and then he disappears, and you see the blanket kind of drop down, and then he becomes a Force ghost later on. Why didn't Anakin become a Force ghost? He got burnt. He got basically, he got incinerated. But he repented at the end. He came back and he said, "I'm good and I'm this and that." But
because he never got the training from Qui-Gon.
I think.
Yeah, wait. He came back as a Force ghost at the end.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think again in my head canon,
True.
the way I justify it
Here we go.
is like that.
Canon.
That body is Darth Vader. It's more machine than man. So I think that was Vader. So, but his Anakin, and maybe they cut away. So maybe when he does die, his head kind of disappears, but the rest of his body is all like machinery.
That was just his armor that they burnt.
I think so.
I'm asking.
That's where I'm going with it.
It's a good point. It's a valid question. We knew nothing about any of this before, back then, but
because he didn't change it, right? Lucas could have done a whole thing.
Right.
Could have changed it and done something with it. So,
I mean, you could argue that, it became really all about Anakin, right? When the prequels came out, then it was, if you think about it, it's really his story, even over Luke, so.
Yeah, the redemption of Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah. So, I don't know.
All right. You guys ready for some 3 lies and a truth?
Sure. All right, let's do it.
This is our first one of the year. And guess what? You guys have to listen. We've got a theme song. So don't nobody talk. Here comes the debut of the 3 lies and a truth theme.
3 lies and a truth we spin through the haze and the dead. What's real? What's the sand? Who cares? Let the game begin.
I love that.
It's very Offspring.
There we go. 3 lies and a truth. The official theme now that we have.
That is fantastic.
Going forward, when you hear that, you know that this segment is coming. And the first one for 2025. If you're new to the show, I'm going to read off 4 statements. 3 of them are lies. Only 1 is true. You need to figure out at home which is the truth. These 3 gentlemen also need to figure out which is the truth. Now, this was a difficult one because I know all you guys know so much about Jedi. So I had to really kind of dig for stuff and see where, see if you can determine where it is. So I'm going to read the 4 statements off. And like I said, 3 of them are not true. And only one of them is true. Okay. And you guys will have to figure this out. So are we ready to play?
Mm-hmm.
You don't need the theme again, right?
It was beautiful.
I loved it.
Okay, here we go. First statement. Yeah. And he hits the thing and just rolls.
Terrible death.
That was the only one good thing about the Book of Boba Fett is they addressed him like getting out. Like that was kind of cool. Like, and he crawled out of the sand. That was
Yep.
Okay,
that was great.
Here we go. 3 lies and a truth. 3 of these statements are false. Only 1 is true. Statement number 1. We know that now that there was going to be originally a Wookiee planet instead of the Ewoks. There were 3 Wookiee planet prototype action figures that were actually made in advance of the film before those changes were made. The last one sold recently for $300,000. Statement number 2. In one draft of the script, Yoda, Ben, Anakin, Aunt Beru, and Uncle Owen were all brought to life at the end as the Force was now back in balance. They were brought back to full life. Statement number 3. The growl sounds of the Rancor were actually made by a German Shepherd. Statement number 4. The Ewok Village playset, the action figures, was later re-released and rebranded as the Sherwood Forest playset from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. I'm going to read those again. There were 3 Wookiee Planet prototype action figures made in advance of the film before they made those changes. The last one most recently sold for $300,000. Number 2, in one script draft, Yoda, Ben, Anakin, Aunt Beru, and Uncle Owen were all brought back to life at the end as the Force was now in balance. Number 3, the growl sounds of the Rancor were made by a German Shepherd. Statement number 4, the Ewok Village playset with the action figures was later re-released and rebranded as Sherwood Forest from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Wow.
Let's see if the Force is with Nick Skywalker.
All right, I'm trying to
3
remember.
of those are lies. One of those is true.
I'm trying to remember what the Rancor sounded like because I was leaning towards the German Shepherd. This is tough. I'm gonna go with the Ewok thing and the Sherwood Forest.
Okay.
I know these toy companies are like, penny pinchers and try to recycle things. So that's what I'm gonna go with as the
You're
truth.
saying that's the truth. Ewok Village
is the
playset
truth.
was later re-released and rebranded as the Sherwood Forest playset for Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
I'm going with that.
All right. Well, we can't have Skywalker without Solo. So, Sean Solo, what is your selection?
Because I have still have the Ewok playset, although it's not in the best of shape.
Uh-huh.
And I was leaning towards that being my answer because I'm not sure of the other. I do remember the Chewbacca thing. I feel like that could be true too.
Okay.
Do I jump on board with Nick, who's got a cannon brain?
A little cannon in his head.
He's all about this. My initial gut was Ewok. It was once I heard Ewok Village, I'm going to go with Ewok Village.
Okay, Ewok Village. Eric, are you going to dissent or are you going to go?
I'm going to go the whole balance of the Force thing.
Balance of the Force.
Yeah, the whole
draft,
like
Yoda, Ben, Anakin, Aunt Beru, and Uncle Owen were all brought back to life at the end as the Force was back in balance.
Let's take the marketing out of my.
Okay.
It's probably not true. Although I know there were several drafts of the script written.
Yes.
And some wild ideas, so this could be one of them. So there it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
You at home, if you're playing, lock in your answers. Let us know on social media, Instagram or Facebook and YouTube, what your choice was, and if we stumped you or if you had it all along. So here we go. Let's go with the first lie. The first untruth is there were 3 Wookiee Planet prototype action figures manufactured. I made that up. There was never any figures made up. I just made that up.
But you said you said they auctioned for a lot of money, right?
I did.
So that's what tricked me because
that's part of my lie.
I used to have a poster that said "Revenge of the Jedi."
Yeah, and that was true.
And if I had kept it, you know how much money that would have been worth?
$30. Everybody has it, It's not that much.
I only kept this guy in
more
the
than I have
package.
now.
What's that? What's Sean?
If I only kept these guys in the package, I'd be.
We'd all, if I kept every baseball card I ever had, also, can live a life of regret. So that's the first lie. That is untrue. Second lie. The growl sounds of the Rancor were made by a German Shepherd. Actually, no, they're made by a Dachshund. Not so ferocious, is it?
No,
so close.
A Dachshund.
I was almost. You almost had me with that one. Almost.
I did. All right. So now we're down to two statements in one script draft. Yoda, Ben, Anakin, Aunt Beru, and Uncle Owen were all brought back to life as the Force was back in balance, and the Ewok Village playset was later re-released and rebranded as the Sherwood Forest playset from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Okay, what are we going to do? We're going to do the final lie, or we're going to do the truth? What do you want?
Well,
lie.
That's up to you guys.
You want the lie?
Yeah.
You want the final lie. In the final lie is In one script draft, Yoda, Ben, Anakin, Emperor, and Uncle Owen were brought back to life as the Force was balanced, because the only change is that it's not that far off from the truth. The truth of that statement is Yoda, Ben, and Anakin were going to be brought back to life, not Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen, but Yoda was going to have the ability to make them actually fully alive again.
Wow.
Because the Force was imbalanced, but certainly not crispy Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen.
I think that would have been an interesting ending.
Yeah,
though.
it's a bit wonky, but
crispy, extra crispy. So the truth is, the Ewok Village playset was later re-released and rebranded as the Sherwood Forest playset. Robin Hood.
I could see it.
I don't know how they adjusted the figure heights, but there you go. Victory. Scout Trooper is in victory, and I have to say, you know what? That one of the sad things about the Ewoks was one of the explosions. I think it was Wicket and like the Chief. And then the Chief was just like laying there still.
Yeah,
Wicket's Wicket's like, come on, let's go. And he's not moving. And he just like stops and lays on top of him. Like that was sad. Like,
That was
it
sad.
was sad, but it was the only death.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was like the Chief,
right?
Like the leader got like taken out. Like he should have been the guy like in the back commanding the troops, not on the forefront of the battlefield.
Yeah,
But but that part was sad, and of course, Wicket was a very cute character.
A great character.
Warwick Davis, who that was actually
Willow.
but it was also actually supposed to be Kenny Baker's character that was with Leia, but he wasn't feeling well. He was sick, so he couldn't make it to the set. So Warwick Davis was a child. He's a child actor. He hadn't done anything. It was his first thing, and they put him in as Wicket. Wicket J. Warwick or W. Warwick, Wicket W. Warwick,
or something like that. Yeah,
It still would have worked with the Wookiees. They could have had baby Wookiees and kid Wookiees. I'm still annoyed. I would have loved to have seen that.
I think they kind of moved off that after the Star Wars Holiday Special too. I think
could be.
And I think the argument I heard was that all that stuff that they wanted to play with like sticks and stones defeating all this technology, but yet the Wookiees are more technologically advanced. But I'm like, they still could have done that. They could have done those traps with logs and stones and things, and it still would have worked.
Yeah, but then it would negate the fact that Chewbacca has a bowcaster.
I know.
And this was the first film that he actually shot the bowcaster, and he did not shoot that in any other film.
Yeah,
Interesting.
It was the first time he actually shot that weapon. He usually has it slung. He's usually just running and telling Han to get out of wherever he is.
Yeah.
He doesn't really fire anything. Right? He's kind of like the friend. Like, come on, let's go. Like, like he's like the wingman for the drunk friend. Pretty much what Chewie, but he's great. I love him.
He's great.
Do we have any favorite scenes as we wind it down?
The battle between Luke and Vader is just fantastic. In Empire, you can see Vader's holding back, and then in the first movie with Obi-Wan, and they're both kind of testing each other out. It's going slow. Some people hate it because it's not as choreographed as the others, but this one was probably, in my opinion, one of my favorites. All the other lightsaber fights in the other movies, the prequels and everything, too choreographed. This one was like perfect. The rage when Luke is like, when Luke is like, he's gonna go after my sister. Screw that, and then it's just like, it's perfect. It is great. I love it.
The music swells at that point. It gets kind of almost operatic, and it's like, whoa.
Does that scene make it a Christmas movie though? Because you got the green and the red, and then the music. Boy. The music feels very John Williams' score during that moment. You will never unsee it now. When you see it, you will be thinking this is Christmas scene.
I'm going to say that's a statement that should stay in your head canon. That's in your head canon only. We already had a holiday.
That's not to say that it hasn't been watched over the Christmas holiday for many, many years growing up. But yeah,
I got these for Christmas. Many.
Nine numb. Day. Eric, what do you got?
I mean, that's that whole business there. I mean, it's just the best part of the movie, And again, very intimate, very. Luke throwing the lightsaber away, and just basically him just, did he anticipate Vader saving him? Did he foresee that? Because he knew that was gonna redeem him. Who knows? But it's a great moment. And of course, the funeral pyre at the end always gets me too. When the music there is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
So
you know what? Lucas should have filmed a scene where somebody, I guess, swims out and gets Vader's helmet, because then Kylo Ren seems to have it. Like, where did that come? Like somebody
Somebody explained it. It's in a comic.
Okay,
It's in,
all right.
yeah. Somebody.
And Eric, you
Yeah.
talk about the Emperor. One thing was very contradictory. He's kind of like, Skywalker is on the planet or something, and the Emperor's like, I didn't foresee this, right? And but then he's like, but I have foreseen that everything. Like, he's foreseen the fall of everything, but he didn't foresee that Skywalker was on Endor. It's like, okay.
Or is he just telling Vader that?
That's true.
When Vader's questioning, will he come to me? And he's kind of he's doubtful, right? I mean, and he's like, I foresaw it. No, it's going to happen. He
was so good, Ian McDiarmid. He was so good at
the best part of this whole saga. I mean, every time he's in it,
he got hammy in the prequels. He got a little hammy, but in this one, he was just pure menace and just like, so like overconfident and just like like so manipulative. So Sean, what do you got?
I like Tatooine. I like the Sarlacc part. A lot of action there. Watching it just, I don't know, that's a part I remember. Kind of get awakened in the theater. Like, oh, there it goes. They just, everything was happening. Boba Fett gets taken out. I didn't like the way he died, but Han's blind and Luke's like, he's climbing up the barge and he's blocking, It's just great. I like when he is like, all right, let's get out of here and don't forget the droids. He's just so cool as the other side of the pillow. It's all Luke. I love that scene.
Yeah, he was just a strategist.
Yeah.
This one, like,
he had it all mapped. It just went down the way he planned it.
Yeah.
Did you guys notice? Like, I have to point this out because I see it every time I watch it, and it bugs the shit out of me in that scene with the sail barge. And you're never going to unsee it if you haven't noticed. But when the barge tilts over, like when it gets hit by the cannon, and you see Solo, he grabs when he's starting to go over. He's holding on with his arm, with his hands. Next thing you know, he's hanging from his feet.
Yeah,
it makes no sense.
Yeah,
whatsoever.
And those feet, and it's like,
and those feet happen to be tied.
Yes.
Like all of a sudden there's a rope there, and it's like it makes absolutely no sense.
100%. I noticed.
I don't know what's worse, that scene or the scene with the bag in Last Crusade when his bag gets caught on the turret. How the hell does that thing get caught on the turret? It bugs the shit out of me every time I watch it.
Yeah,
it's one of those things.
Right. Yeah. Well, little continuity.
I noticed it last night. 100%.
Yeah.
I have they're small scenes, so I'm going to do two small scenes. Why are droids getting tortured?
Oh gosh,
with the feet. Yeah,
I love. Yeah, like we enter the scene. They're like burning the feet of like one, and he's like crying. He's like,
yeah.
And then the other one, they're pulling them apart. Like, oh, the last one that didn't serve the master, and then they show the droid getting his arms getting pulled apart.
He's on the rack.
Like, just shut him off.
Yeah. It's just. I think it's just I think what it was is that robot was just like a sadist.
Yeah,
yeah, I just enjoyed.
Like obviously, and then they showed like the robot, the other robot getting burned again, like the hot irons and the smoke. I'm like, this like when we saw it, we probably didn't think much of it when you're young. It's like, oh, okay, It's like, wait, they're robots, but it's made a point. But my the scene I really like, or sequences I like is Bib Fortuna. I really liked his character. I really liked just the way he looked, the fingernails, and just his the sleek way. Like he kind of like has these big, almost like silent film actor movements, right? And and just his way of talking. Like the guy who did the acting was just I think Francis Ford Coppola took a little bit of Gary Oldman's Dracula from Bib Fortuna. Whenever I saw him,
I can see that.
That reminds me of that. But
so
those scenes were just great with him in it. For some, I don't know.
Were you sad when he got done dirty in the Book of Boba Fett?
Yeah, he got
at the end of
he was like Jabba size.
Mandalorian. Was it Mandalorian where he gets taken out?
Book of Boba.
No, it was
No, I think it was.
No, it was the end of Mandalorian because he came in and killed him and got on the throne.
And that's how we get the Book of Boba Fett.
No, Bib Fortuna got all bloated, so
he was like retired.
I think in my headcanon, he's becoming like Jabba.
Headcanon. There he is.
That's true.
There he is.
Yep.
Oh, he was. I just love like it was just he spoke like a combination of whatever and English, and it was just kind of
Yeah.
Can I?
He was a good, sort of consigliere to Jabba.
Yeah.
He's whispering, telling him what's what in his ear. Like he's no
Right.
Jedi. Don't listen.
Yeah, that was cool.
Can I mention one question though? In the first movie, C-3PO says, "I'm not much of a storyteller," and then in this movie, he's like, recreating the whole story, and people are like infatuated and
with
so I
sound
thought-
effects to boot.
It's like boom. I'm like, what a great storyteller he's become. So I don't know.
Google
That's
Sonic.
one thing I can't figure out in my head canon how that makes sense. But
It's the character's arc. That's his arc.
I
he's
guess
grown.
He went from
He's seen
power-
so much. Now he's a good storyteller. Yeah.
Sean, you got something to show us there? It seems like you're prepping something.
Nice.
There it is. The Darth Vader Kenner action figure holder carry case.
He
That's
could have.
huge.
He could have just held that up the whole episode.
The whole
Had
episode.
Vader talking.
Done the episode. Yeah. Yeah, you should have been Chad Vader.
Yep.
Nice.
That would have been good.
A lot of toys.
I think that's going to do it for this episode of the 3324 podcast. We had a lot of fun. This closes out the Star Wars trilogy. Alas, in my head canon, I don't foresee us doing the prequels. I don't see it, but you never say never if we're here long enough. But for me, it would just be an hour.
Hate watching.
Yeah, it would be an hour of complaining for the most part. And maybe there will be some sentimentality at this point, but we'll see. Never say never. But for now, I think mission accomplished. We covered the original trilogy, which is the most beloved for people of a certain age. And yeah, we tore it apart a little bit, but we showed plenty of love too. There's a lot to look at, and a lot to pick apart, but there's still a lot that keeps you engaged and keeps you watching, and just revisiting with these original characters is always like Eric said, it's comfort food. It's always
Absolutely.
It's an easy watch, and it has endured.
Yeah, it does.
No, so
you got to take it for what it is.
yeah.
It's entertainment. It's supposed to be serialized style entertainment, and for George Lucas, we'll call these three mission accomplished. You can say what you want about anything after, but for these, it was of a time, of a period, of a certain style of movie making where people needed to come up. THX was invented as a result of this as well, because the sound systems were just not up to his spec. He goes, I need to invent something, and then I'm going to make everybody put it in their theaters. So, this, necessity was the mother of invention back then with these effects. I mean, this series of films was groundbreaking for what it did for special effects, and kind of that was that leap forward that brought everybody else up to this point. And then we would see that, probably in 91 with T2. That was another one of those watershed leap forwards in effects where the rules had changed, and Star Wars was a rule changer. There's no two ways about it. So it was our pleasure to spend the past 3 years talking about it.
That's how long it took to make the damn things every 3 years. So
Yep.
there you go.
So we're right on time.
Yep.
We are right on time as it was. So we want to thank you for joining us for this episode of the 3324 podcast. Like I said, in the beginning, you can hit us up on the socials. We're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. If you leave comments, we respond to them. So by all means, let us know what you liked about it, disliked. Were our takes way off? Are we grumpy old men? Is Nick's headcanon a new thing now that we're going to have to deal with in every episode of what goes on in his head and what he believes?
Could be.
What's a Christmas film? What's not a Christmas film? We'll leave it to future episodes to decide. So in the meantime, Nick Skywalker Leshy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Sean Solo Grady and his friend Jabba with the opposable tail that moves.
Yeah.
Does he have a switch on the back to do that, or on the bottom? Didn't you?
You move the head.
Oh, it's the head. Okay, because if you put him on the play set, he would move, right? If you did something. No, or if you
Not
put him
really.
Okay. I'm mistaken. Okay. And Eric will be on his couch. I'm going to be in my new stylish gamer chair, which makes it more comfortable to do these episodes. So that's going to do it for Nick, for Sean, and for Eric. This has been Dean, asking you to please be kind, Go ahead, rewind.